All right, then. Let's just pick up one. Cookie Monster. Did you eat the banana? Chapter 7. A Mad Tea Party. There was a table... Oh, damn. Oh, Roy. Let's try again. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. A mad tea party. Chapter 7. A Mad Tea Party. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it. And the Dormouse was sitting between them, fast asleep. The other two were using it as a cushion. Why not? The other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head. Very uncomfortable for the Dormouse, thought Alice. Only, as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. No room, no room, they all cried out when they saw Alice coming. There's plenty of room, said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. Have some wine, said the March Hare, in an encouraging tone. Alice looked all around the table, but there was nothing on it but tea. I don't see any wine, she remarked. Well, there isn't any, said the March Hare. Well, then it wasn't very civil of you to offer it, said Alice angrily. Well, it wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited, said the March Hare. Well, I didn't know it was your table, said Alice. It's laid out for a great many more than three. Your hair wants cutting, said the Hatter. Said the Hatter. He had been looking at Alice for some time with great curiosity, and this was his first speech. You shouldn't make personal remarks, said Alice, with some severity. It's very rude. The Hatter opened his eyes very wide on hearing this, but all he said was, Why is a raven like a writing desk? Like a writing desk. There we go. We'll throw that one in there. Come now, we shall have some fun, thought Alice. I'm glad they've begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that, she added aloud. Do you mean that you can find out the answer to it? Said the March Hare. Exactly so, said Alice. And you should say what you mean, said the March Hare. The March Hare went on. I do, Alice replied hastily. At least I mean what I say. That's the same thing, you know. Not the same thing. Not the same thing a bit, said the Hatter. Said the Hatter. You just might well say that I eat what I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see. You might as well just say, added the March Hare, that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like. You might as just well say, added the Dormouse, who seemed to be talking in his sleep, that I breathe what I eat is the same as I sleep what I breathe. It is the same thing with you, said the Hatter. Said the Hatter. There the conversation dropped, and the party sat silent for a minute. Well, Alice thought it over for all she could remember about ravens and writing desks, which wasn't very much. The Hatter was the first. The Hatter was the first to break the silence. What day of the month is it? He said, turning to Alice, and he had taken a watch out of his pocket and looking at it uneasily and shaking it every now and then and holding it to his ear. Alice considered it a little then and said, the fourth. The fourth. 2 days wrong, sighed the Hatter. Oh, I told you butter wouldn't suit the Wipes, he added, looking angrily at the March Hare. It was the best butter, the March Hare meekly replied. Yeah, but some crumbs must have got in it as well, said the Hatter, grumbling. You shouldn't have put it in there with a bread knife. The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily, and then he dipped it into his cup of tea and looked at it again, but then he could think of nothing better to say than his first remark. It was the best butter, you know. How did it open up like that? You and I both know what happened there. Alice had been looking over his shoulder for some curiosity. What a funny watch. Oh. What a funny watch, she remarked. It tells the day of the month, but it doesn't tell what o'clock it is. Well, why should it? Why should it? How do I want to do that one? I don't know. Apparently. Why shouldn't it? Why should it? Muttered the Hatter. Does your watch tell what year it is? Well, of course not. Of course not, Alice replied readily. But that's because it stays the same year for such a long time altogether. Well, it's just the case with mine, said the Hatter. Alice felt dreadfully puzzled. The Hatter's remark seemed to have no sort of meaning in it, and yet it certainly was English. I didn't quite understand you, she said, and as she politely as she could. Terrible. Terrible, Harold, terrible. The Dormouse is asleep. Alice felt dreadfully puzzled at the Hatter's remarks seemed to be English. I don't quite understand you, she said as politely as she could. The Dormouse is asleep again, said the Hatter, and he poured a little hot tea upon its nose. The Dormouse shook its head impatiently and said, without opening its eyes, Of course. Just what I was going to remark myself. Have you guessed the riddle yet? The Hatter said, turning to Alice again. No, I give up, Alice replied. What's the answer? Well, I haven't the slightest idea, said the Hatter. Nor I, said the March Hare. Alice sighed wearily. I think you might do something better with the time, she said, than waste time asking riddles that have no answers. Ain't that right? Pointless questions. Unanswered. Oh, sidetracked. I think you might do something better with the time, she said, than wasting it asking riddles that you have no answers to. Well, if you knew time as well as I do, said the Hatter, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him. I don't know what you mean, said Alice. Well, of course you don't, said the Hatter, tossing his head contemptuously. Why, I dare say you never even spoke to time. Well, perhaps not, Alice replied cautiously, but I know I have to beat time when I learn music. Ah, that accounts for it, said the Hatter. He wouldn't stand for a beating. Now, if only you kept on good times with him, well, he'd do almost anything you liked with the o'clock. For instance, if it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and just in time for begin lessons, you'd only have to whisper a hint at time,
and round goes the clock a-twinkling. 1:30, time for dinner.
I only wish it was, said the March Hare to himself in a whisper. That would be grand, certainly, said Alice thoughtfully. But then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know.
Well, not at first, perhaps,
said the Hatter.
but you could keep it 1:30 as long as you liked.
What is that the way you manage? Is that the way you manage? Alice asked. The Hatter shook its head mournfully.
No, he replied. We quarreled last March, just before he went mad, you know,
pointing his teaspoon to the March Hare.
It was the great concert given by the Queen of Hearts, and I had to sing, Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how you wonder where you're at. You know the song, perhaps.
Well, I've heard something like it. I've heard something like it, said Alice.
It goes on, the Hatter continued. It goes on,
The Hatter, the Hatter continued.
In this way. Up above the world you fly, like a tree in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle.
Here the Dormouse shook itself and began singing in its sleep.
Twinkle,
twinkle, twinkle, twinkle, twinkle. And it went on so long that it had to pinch it to make it stop.
Well, I'd hardly finished the first voice,
said the Hatter,
when the Queen jumped up and bawled out, "He's murdering time! Off with his head!"
"How dreadfully savage!" exclaimed Alice.
And ever since that,
the Hatter went on in a mournful tone,
he won't do a thing I ask. It's always 6 o'clock now. Look, I'm a grown person.
A bright idea came into Alice's head. Is that the reason there are so many tea things put out here?
You're damn right,
she asked.
Yeah, that's it, said the Hatter with a sigh. It's always tea time, and, well, we have no time to wash things in between whilst.
Then you keep moving round, I suppose, said Alice.
Exactly so, said the Hatter, as the things get used up.
But what happens when you come to the beginning again? Alice ventured to ask.
Well, suppose we change... What am I doing here?
Suppose we change the subject, the March Hare interrupted, yawning. I'm getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story. Well, I'm afraid I don't know anyone. I'm afraid I don't know one, said Alice, rather alarmed at the proposal. Then the Dormouse shall, they both cried. Wake up the Dormouse! And they pinched it on both sides at once. The Dormouse slowly opened its eyes. I wasn't asleep, he said in a hoarse and feeble voice. I've heard every word you fellows were saying.
Oh. That is a wet whistle. That is not a wet whistle. I can't articulate.
But what happens when you come back to the beginning? Tell us a story. Tell us a story, said the March Hare. Yes, please do, pleaded Alice. And be quick about it, added the Hatter.
Or you'll be asleep again before. Or you'll. And be quick. He goes down. And be quick about it,
Added the Hatter.
or you'll be asleep again before it's done.
I don't know. This just sounds right for that thing. Wait, is it? Yeah. Here we go. Illustrations.
Then the dormouse shall be quick about it. On and on and on, so on and so forth. And I'm sure he will.
Once upon a time, there were three little. And he begins in a great hurry. Once upon a time, there were three little sisters. The Dormouse began in a great hurry, and her names were Elsie, Lacey, and Tilly, and they lived in the bottom of a well. What did they live on? Said Alice, who always took a great interest in asking questions of eating and drinking. They lived on treacle.
I hope that's the right word and pronunciation and all that shit.
They lived on treacle, said the Dormouse, after thinking a minute or two. Well, they couldn't have done that, you know, Alice remarked gently. They'd have been ill. Well, so they were, said the Dormouse. Very ill. Alice tried to fancy herself with what such an extraordinary way of living would be like, but it puzzled her too much. So she went on. So she went on. By the way, did they live at the bottom of a well? But why did they live at the bottom of a well?
Is not happening right now. Take some more tea,
said the March Hare to Alice very earnestly. Well, I've had nothing yet, Alice replied, very offended tone, so I can't take more.
Ah, you mean you can't take less? You mean you can't take less?
Said the Hatter.
It's very easy to take more than nothing.
Nobody asked your opinion, said Alice. Little bitch.
Now who's making personal remarks now?
The Hatter asked triumphantly. Alice did not quite know what to say to this, so she helped herself to some tea and bread and butter, and then turned into the Dormouse and repeated her question, and I do believe that you are sleeping soundly. Yes, yes? Yes. Anyway. Yay, reading stuff. It's very comfy. It's cozy. Well, I don't really understand it myself, but these sounds feel good, and feeling good is nice. I don't like that. That's like an open tongue. Nah. Yeah. Yeah, I can just open it up right there and put it. But I don't know that that's something that I want for myself. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, is it a daily driver? No. And I don't want it to be. But it's one I want to be able to play with every now and then. Something open and down deep. But not so deep. Anyway, I can bring it up and down and all around and all that fun stuff, and I'm just gonna keep kind of exploring with this shit. One day, I'm going to find that it bothers me less to speak. No, I'm gonna cry. Be strong. Anyway, This sound matters to me, and I'm going to find it, whatever it takes, wherever I am. Love you. Love you out.